And a man came up to me in the park and he said to me, "Is that a dog in your pram?" And I went, "Somebody stole my baby and swapped it."
I think it's safe to say they like you, but I'm just conscious that we don't want to cut down the time you've got to spend with Janey. My name is Ruth Wishart, and it's my great pleasure to be welcoming you all to this event at the Edinburgh International Book Festival. And this is what I think we might call one of the more high-risk events at the Edinburgh International Book Festival, because well, let's face it, neither of us are women who've ever knowingly deleted an expletive. However, Janey says she's going to be in her very best behaviour just to annoy you. She's a woman who comes in many guises, as we know. She's, of course, a hugely successful stand-up comedian. She's also a not inconsiderable actor, as her Scenes for Survival for the National Theatre of Scotland during the lockdown underlined. She's spread much merriment with her voiceovers, which Mary actually vents to her somewhat anarchic take on what might actually have been said. And the most famous of these came during the First Minister's COVID briefings, which you may have seen, and her translation of what would befall anyone who failed to follow the First Minister's advice was an absolute joy. And of course, she's a writer. Shut the Door, Frank collected some of the more memorable voiceovers, whilst Handstands in the Dark was a memoir of her Glasgow childhood. Meanwhile, when the rest of us were doing something really, really useful, like cleaning out the undies drawer, she wrote her first novel, As You Do. So Nothing Left Unsaid is set in that part of Glasgow where she grew up, and it features many characters and items which also made an appearance during the voiceovers, like Isa and the holiday caravan and that ubiquitous big soup pot which got passed around as necessity demanded. And she is a one-off, ladies and gentlemen, as you know. She's got more strings to her bow than the Royal Company of Archers. So please welcome, again, Janey Godley.
Can't you believe there's that many people here? I thought I'd turn up, there'd be like 12 people and one angry man. It's always one angry man.
We'll get to the angry men in just a minute because they feature quite a lot in the book. But the first thing we have to get clear, Janey, is how you are. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. For those who don't know, I had ovarian cancer. I still have ovarian cancer. If you are a woman and you feel bloated and you're not eating, and every time you eat you feel full and you go and wee a lot, go to your doctor, get checked out. So I had that, and then I had a hysterectomy. If you ever want to feel like a spatchcock chicken, that's what today. And then after the hysterectomy, I had 6 rounds of chemo and a blood transfusion. And now I've got a wee bit of a sore tummy hernia thing happening. So, but they've said that there is no evidence of disease, but ovarian cancer is a very persistent cancer, and there's a 70 to 90% chance it's going to come back. And when it comes back, I'll just do the same thing again. I don't like the language of fighting cancer and being brave, because I wasn't brave, Ruth. I cried I cried this morning, I cry every single day. So that crap about being brave and being strong is detrimental, because I'm not brave and strong. I just gave my body over to science and went, fix it. And then in between had big snotty greedy bubbles constantly.
I am probably the only person in the room who's seen Janey's actual scar, and I didn't ask.
I showed her it. Whether she wanted it or no.
Trust me, it's not the best thing ever after your breakfast, but there you go. Now, I want to take you back, Janey, to when you first found out about all of this, and you were on a sellout tour, as you always are, or always were.
Yep.
how big a shock to that was you, both mentally and physically, when you realised that you had to curtail the tour and get treated?
It was at the very end of the tour. I just had 2 gigs at Musselburgh and a big show at the EIC, Edinburgh International Conference Centre. And it was, I was in London, I was everywhere. And I kept saying, I feel really bloated. And I just kept putting, women would do it, but like, I'm just fat. Don't say that to yourself, get it checked. And when I got back to Glasgow, I quickly went to the doctor. The doctor's just across the road from me. She had a feel at it. She took a blood test. She phoned me the next morning. She says, the cancer marker in your blood is really high. Go to the hospital. I went to the hospital. They had a Star Wars wand. They had a look in my ninky and put a big screen up, and I could see the tumour. And they couldn't do anything about it because I had COVID that day. I didn't know. So my husband, my daughter, and I all had COVID, and I had cancer. And I came home and the COVID didn't affect me because I've drank out a puddle when I was a child. They too, middle class, couscous eating. They're like, I'm no well. I'm like, I've got cancer. Like, could you make me a wee chopped up egg in a cup? No, because I've got cancer. So they too were dying of the COVID and I had cancer in the living room going, and I had to phone my agent and say, I can't finish the tour. I felt really bad for all the people in the theatres because their jobs, you know, people lost money and people lost, it was just awful.
It's not a bad alibi.
I know, but still I felt really bad. And I still haven't quite taken in the fact that I have cancer. I can't step back and look at the big picture. It frightens me too much. So I just pretend I don't have it and go on with my day.
Well, look, we're going to go on to talk about the book, Janey, because as I was saying, you know, it's a hell of a thing to be doing when you're feeling fine, even but when you're not feeling very well. It's a great read. It really is a great read. And I have to say, most people think they've got a novel in them, and that's where it should mostly stay. But in this case, I'm awful glad you got it out there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing because it's set where you grew up, and because a lot of the characters are characters with whom you'd be familiar when you were growing up, I'm guessing that most of the necessary research was already there in your head.
Yeah, it was all there. I also hired a researcher called Caitlin, who I met in a pub, and I said to her, you know, I didn't know what she did. She was just waitressing in a pub, and I said to her, what do you study? She went, English. I went, what do you want to be? She went, I want to work in publishing, but, you know, barmaids don't write books. I went, I was a barmaid and I wrote a book. So I hired her on the spot, and I paid her, and she is the best researcher ever. She dressed in the 70s. We played 70s music, but yeah, the story was there, and she made sure that I was getting all the facts of the 70s right. So I'm very proud of Caitlin Mellon, who now works in publishing.
Well done.
Yeah.
The moral of the story, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is if you want to work in publishing, go and be a barmaid. But she was very lucky to meet somebody like you who was able to put her trust.
Yeah, I think the whole book was about lifting women up. So inadvertently, I lifted another woman up while I was writing the book. And she was great. Caitlin and I, you know, I bashed out the story. And then in the middle of the night, I realised I couldn't make the story go. I was writing this during COVID. During lockdown, and I was panicking the whole time. It was the hardest thing I've ever done because I kept thinking we're all going to die. And then I went into the kitchen in the middle of the night and I said to Ashley, my daughter, I went, I'm stuck. I didn't know what book I was writing, Ruth, when I started writing it. So I just kind of wrote it. It came out itself in a sense. And she said, how far have you got? I went, here. She went, why don't you make there be a missing page? So she came up with that idea.
Well, we won't go into too much of that because it would spoil it, but that is a thread that runs through, and there's a very, very clever ending to it. But I'm glad you brought up the bit about bigging women up, Janey, because it struck me when I was reading it that it's really big on strong women and supportive friendships and all of that. But all of the men get a really bad rap. I mean, they're either wife-beaters, crooks, or downright feckless, apart from the narrator's gay brother.
Yeah. Well, that was the men I grew up with. I grew up with men who very easily abandoned one woman and her 3 children and started a family with another woman. It's not saying all men are like that, but this is what it was like for me in the 70s growing up. I watched that. I watched men at 16, 17 getting their girlfriend, 16, 17 pregnant, having kids, and then going, done with that, moving on and starting. And it was always the women that were stigmatised. It was never the man who left them behind. It was always her, the single mammy, the drain on the system. She's nothing but a slapper. She's got 3 wains and nae man. She couldn't help her man left. The men never get marked out as abandoners. They were always like cock of the walk. So I thought I'd do it that way.
I think...
Thank you. So I wanted people to see that sidey woman. I wanted people to see how those women survived in that very weird environment.
We only let feminists in this morning of both sexes. Just to, but there's one thing that I wonder though, I mean, because you know, all of the cast list, you know, Isa, Philomena, Bunty, Janine and poor old Sandra, and they were always there for each other in the book, and I'm not sure that that's always true of the sisterhood. Do you think you might have been romanticising any of it in terms of their support for each other?
No, well, not in my experience. I mean, I suppose there is the romanticising of it because my wee mammy was murdered, and had she had stronger women around her, she might have been alive today. So it is a kind of love letter to Annie as well, in the hope that that's would have happened, you know. And I did see a lot of sisterhood happening. But of course there is, you know, romanticised to keep them together. And I think it's actually reflecting on the sisterhood I have as women today. I've put it on to the women back in the 70s. Their mama did have a strong group of women, but, you know, when she ended up isolated with her boyfriend and a man who made her isolated from all her friends so that he could, you know, kill her in peace.
It's interesting, you know, you talking about your mum and you and the bond and all of that, but in the book, the narrator is a woman called Sharon, and she's come home to Glasgow because her mum, Senga, is dying. So the way that this book's structured, which is really very interesting, is that there's chapters that are Senga in the 70s, and then there's chapter of today's Sharon reflecting on what gave you the idea of doing it like that?
Ashley. Yeah. My daughter says to me, make it in 2 time zones, because that'll really work good on telly. She said, actually, it wasn't just her, that I had written this blog years ago, called A Blog from a Woman. If a woman could blog in the 1970s, it's still up there, you can still find it. And that was the germ of Senga. It was if a woman could blog in the 1970s. Imagine what that would be like, because today's blog's like, hi there, just cleaned the kitchen. I'm having my juice before I take a 6-mile run with the babies in a runny pram. A woman in the 70s would wake up and go, smoked 2 fags, read a Jackie Collins book and sent the wains out to school. So that's where the germ came from. That wee tiny bud came out. And then when I wrote it, I wanted to set it in the past. But Ashley went, chop and change it all the time. So I was having a lot of advice on it. She's a really good writer, my daughter, which I'm lucky, because at 5 in the morning, standing in the kitchen crying, she's like, what's wrong now? It's like, I don't know how to write this, but yeah, you do. Shut up, sit down, just do it. And that's what I did.
See what I mean about deleting the expletives for your benefit? I mean, I'm listening to all of the adjectives that are not coming in here.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, you know, Senga and all her pals, of course, and she said they were abandoned and they were single mothers and they were having to make do and mend and they're getting everything thrown at them. And there's all kinds of stuff happening, you know, in terms of trying to pay the bills, trying to feed the wains, all that stuff we know about. And I'm wondering, I mean, we seem to be almost reliving that now.
Yes, that's a really good point. Where the energy bills coming up. If anybody knows, in the book there's a great trick. It's a bit of X-ray paper and just stick it in your meter and it stops the wheel going round.
There's quite a lot.
I don't advocate you doing that.
Actually, there's quite a lot of Senga's wee winning ways in the book.
Yes, there's a lot of tips, and it is very relative today. She runs a Menage which if you don't know is no having sex with three men. It's like a money club, and she does football cards. But I knew women who ran Monogies, ran the Pippa parties, did the Tupperware parties, ran the stolen clothes off of the back of a van to reset them. These were my people, so it's how they made money. You know, on one hand, you've got society saying you're sucking the life out of, you know, the benefit system. On the other hand, they're saying you're wrong for selling jeans off the back of a lorry. These women couldn't win, but they did.
That's where, of course, that famous phrase, "he couldn't run a Menage," comes from.
That's the famous phrase, you couldn't run a Menage. You should see the state of your nets. They've not been dipped since the first fortnight. Yeah.
You've got, you know, as I said, I don't want to give away the end, but the thread that runs through is about Senga having, unbeknownst to her daughter, has been kept a kind of diary,
Yep.
a running total of the number of cups of coffee and fags and
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
number of stuff that had been sold off the back of lorries and all of that. So, I mean, how difficult was that for you? Did you use the material that you'd written all these years ago, or did you start from scratch?
Oh, I knew all that. I had all that. I knew women that had 3 jobs. There's people in this audience whose mammies and daddies had 3 jobs. We mammies that got up at 6 in the morning and cleaned, you know, and used to take their kids with them to clean offices and big hooses. And I knew all of that. My granda had a girlfriend called Flo Schofield, great name. And Flo used to clean the bingo, and she used to take me where. And I remember just sweeping up millions of cigarette butts, just like hurling them all together and putting them in bins. Women took their kids to work with them, you know, and because they didn't have the childcare. And I knew all these stories. I knew all these women. I know Senga. My favourite one is Bridie McBride. She's a real person.
Explain to the audience.
Bridie McBride is a character in the book, and she's a friend of mine. She actually passed away just as the book got published. And Tony Kelly, who is my best friend, he was Eden Milgin, Tony Kelly, and it was his auntie Bridie McBride. So he bought loads of books to give to all the family so they all could read about wee Bridie McBride. But great names, Bridie, Philomena, Senga. I grew up with a woman called Netta Noon that lived near us, and I never used her in the book. I should have. Netta Noon, what a great name.
The other thing about that is, because we both know that Glasgow can be a hotbed of sectarianism and all the kind of rough stuff, but these women who came from different traditions didn't seem to bother about any of that.
No, I was brought up a staunch Protestant. My mammy hated Catholics so much that I married one. But it was all front, Ruth. Our best pals were Catholics, you know, and it was all front. It was all, I remember getting a picture of Jesus and then colouring them in and putting them on a horse that I got out the back of the bunty, and Mama thought it was King Billy. It was Jesus on a horse. Just did it to annoy her. Because Jesus and King Billy look very alike.
Except that one was browner than the other.
Yeah, except one was for Palestine and one was for the Dutch House of Orange. But yeah, there was a lot of sectarianism. But I think, in reality, these women who needed each other didn't care about that. You know, they're like, that's the thing for the men today. You know, it tends to be the men that went into the pub and went...
So you're very kind about the Orange Lodge in the book.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not often you get Wednesday learn the flute, is it? You don't get that many. It's my daughter Ashley's joke. She went, don't knock the orange walk. There's not many working class children are flautists. Ashley's joke, not mine.
It's not a bad gag, right enough.
She's a good writer, is my daughter, and it's true, you know.
Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up was, I mean, you're a devotee of Twitter. You turn up on Twitter all the time, and Twitter saw your audience and your fans through your illness because you were able to give them an update. And you said on Twitter that helped you, but I'm sure it helped a lot of other people as well.
It helped me because I think that, and I didn't want to wear a wig. I wanted to keep my head bald and just let everybody see it, because I think there must be women out there, especially women, men as well, but especially women who lose all their hair. And I had loads of hair. I was like a Shetland pony. And I wanted women to see that and go, well, who cares? And the amount of people that tried to force me into a wig. You know, like, we've got a wee wig for you. I was like, I don't want a wig. But you can get a wee free wig on the NHS. Again, I'll just colour my head in with a Sharpie. I don't want a wig. People try to push it. And I went, is my bald head disturbing you? Well, don't look at it. That's the answer.
I noticed when we've been chatting just now, I noticed that you've been kind of doing that
weird.
exactly. Is it itchy?
No, it's a fabulous feeling. I just can't believe my hair. I mean, the last time my hair was this short, I was 6 months old. So I just love the feel of it. And I love my hair was a lot of maintenance, and it took an hour to wash, blow dry, fix it, make it look nice. Now I'm in and out of the shower, and I'm like, that's me done. This is great. I don't think I'll ever grow it. I think I'm going to keep this.
Well, not quite that length, maybe.
I might.
You think?
I think I might. Yeah, I don't know.
Are you going to keep the colour?
I'm going to keep it white, yeah. Yeah, that's I've got a big black stripe at the back, my husband said.
Well, white hair is very fashionable.
I don't care. I think you're right, Ruth. It is very fashionable, and you've been a trendsetter for a long time.
You should never give a comedian a feed line. It's always an error of judgment. Listen, let's get back to Twitter for a moment, because one of the other things that, one of the other features of Janey Godley's Twitter feed is Honey, now the world's best known dachshund. And I'm remembering, I think, that your man didn't want a dog at all, and now he's besotted.
Didn't want a dog. He's like, don't bring a dog into this house. I don't want to see a dog. I'm not having a dog. I'm not taking a dog out for a pee or a poo. I'm not doing anything with the dog. So the dog needs to stay away from me. I'm autistic and I don't like dogs, and yous have been told this. That night, Ashley just brought home a sausage dog, barked at me, didn't like me, looked at husband like Pepe Le Pew, love hearts coming out her eyes, like, hello, strange man of the quietness in the corner, you're going to be the love of my life. And he now dances and sings Barbara Streisand songs into her face. The very first night we got her, I went, that dog has to stay on the floor. He went, oh, absolutely, that dog's not getting in the bed. I don't want a dog, I'm not interested in the dog. I was like, yeah, no, I don't even want to sleep with you sharp. So put the dog on the floor, laid down, and all I heard was, and she's at the side of the bed. And I was like, oh, that wee dog's wanting that. He's like, that dog does not get in this bed. I was like, no, it doesn't. Put it back down, lay back down, and then quiet. And I thought, yeah, I've nailed it, I'm the dog whisperer. I turned round, and the sausage dog's face was there. And he's like, I think she was lonely. I'm like, really? So we've now got her back on the floor, and every night he gives her 2 wee biscuits, and then he goes to bed. Then 10 minutes later she cries, and he gets up and sits on the floor and sings a wee song and tucks her in. Never did that with Ashley.
Do you know that while you're thinking about what's going on with her man and the dog, what she's not telling you is that she is as besotted, if not more so. The dog goes to her bed with a wee knitted blanket over it. And then when Janey goes to her favourite deli, it's in a pram with a wee knitted blanket over it. And then she gets fed from the deli.
She does. She's in a pram. A lot of people say the reason she's in a pram is she said, I mean, as soon as we got her, she took an illness and it cost $8,000 in the vets. The husband who didn't want a dog's like, take my card. I was like, okay. She's got a blood disorder disease. She can walk 2 miles because she's got wee tiny legs. So I walk her 2 miles, then I put her in the pram because the people who owned her before never let her out. She loves being out, but you can't walk her on the ground forever. So I put her in the pram, and she's like a wee Agnes McDade hanging out the pram like that, watching the world. And a man came up to me in the park and he said to me, is that a dog in your pram? And I went, somebody stole my baby and swapped it. They've swapped my baby for a wee dog. Get the police. He ran away.
That's absolutely the worst excuse I've ever heard for buying a pram for a dog.
I love the pram with the dog. She can walk, and it's good for me because it's stability for me. When I'm learning to walk again, I'm not as strong. I can get up to 5 miles a day now. But the pram is good stability for me when I'm not feeling great. I can hold on to it. And she's very attentive. She watches me the whole time. And it's also good for getting all your messages under. And I'll tell you what else is good, and I'll tell you why. You can go into a shop with a pram. You can't leave your dog outside. You just go right in. Just put a wee cover over it, and that woman must have a wee grandchild out there. Then Honey's wee nose pokes out the side.
And they don't like to say anything in case it is your grandchild.
I said she looks very like her father.
Now,
she was so upset when I was leaving today. She was standing at the door going, "You're not leaving me, are you?" And then every time I come back, because we dogs can't tell the difference between 3 minutes and 3 weeks. So when I come back, she's always at the top of the stairs going, "Ah!" She's a bawhead away if you're speaking English. And what she's basically saying is, "I thought you were dead. And you're back, and they don't feed me like you feed me." So
that's certainly true.
that's true.
And the other thing, I mean, this deli that we've been referring to is called Eusebius, and it's in Glasgow. It's a really nice place to eat. I recommend it. But you mention it so often on Twitter, and it even gets into the book. I don't believe there was a Eusebius in Shettleston.
There was. That's where they started out, and they still have one there.
In Shettleston?
In Shettleston, they have a Eusebius. My mammy was best pals with the Eusebius. In fact, wee Joe Eusebi cut my mammy's hair for my wedding day and cut my husband's hair, because Italians are great at two things, and especially two, hairdressing and food. And they were hairdressers in Glasgow and Shettleston, and they had a deli in Shettleston. I knew Giovanna's granda. My mammy was brought up with the Eusebius.
So there was. I just assumed that. I mean, I've thought for months now that you ought to be on 10% of Eusebius.
Yeah. Ashley says, when I die, you know that wee missive you get when you come to somebody's funeral? Everybody's went very quiet. Right, okay. When I die, she's designed one of those wee... Janey, it's a shame for Janey, she's dead, but there's a wee 20% discount voucher on it. You've got it all planned.
So, I mean, more or less, you're back to normal. I know you've dipped a toe in the water of, you did some stuff for Radio 4 and whatnot. But I mean, do you visualise going back on tour again?
Yes, I'm going back on tour next February. I'm hoping to be alive. Thank you. And the tour is called Not Dead Yet. So.
And there's a 20% discount
Yeah.
on the tickets.
If I die, you come to my funeral, and you get a wee, Ashley will give you a wee discount. You can go to Eusebius and get a coffee and a sandwich with it. 20% off. It's a shame Janey's dead. That's the code word. It's a shame Janey's dead. Can I have 20 pence?
I was going to ask you if you're nervous at all about going back on tour, but judging by this morning, you're not.
No, I'm not nervous about doing stand-up. The only thing that ever made me nervous was Just a Minute. That was a really nerve-wracking thing to do, because not only is it it's a giant, it's got history, it's iconic, and I didn't want to be the person that broke it. So, and my husband loved Just a Minute, and he said I ruined it because he won't listen to anything I do. He doesn't like anything. No, that's not true. Because he's autism, he'd rather not have anything that I'm on. And he's like, "You're doing Just a Minute, I couldn't listen to it. Next you'll be in The Archers." I was like, shut up.
I'm thinking, given that Just a Minute is about talking for a minute without repetition, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, can you do that for a whole programme without using a sweary word?
Yep. I mean, people have this image that I'm this really sweary, foul-mouthed, savage, and I deliberately don't swear just to annoy people. I do. When people say, "Oh, that's Janey Godley on Have I Got News," wait till you see the filth that comes out of her mouth. Not one word. La 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 la.
So this is where I don't tell you what happened in the green room. But I mean, were you really scared? Does a programme like that scare you? Because you've done a lot of Radio 4 stuff.
It's terrifying. Your heart just bangs in your chest, and you've Paul Merton, you've got Sue Perkins, you've got old Uncle Nicky who passed away. I loved him. I used to call him Uncle Nick. He's passed away, Nicholas Parsons, and you've got like Giles Brandreth, and you're like Janey for Shettleston going, "Oh, I remember cats," So you have to be on your game, and that was the most nerve-wracking. Doing stand-up, writing, doing stuff isn't frightening. I think once you've been through a big giant hysterectomy and had a big giant tumour pulled out your ninky, or you've been stood in a pub in 1982 and a guy came in with a gun, everything else is like a Tuesday.
It doesn't really matter. What about writing, though? Because this is, I know you've written books before, but this one is your first novel. And as I say, a lot of the stuff was very familiar to you because of it. So I'm assuming you're going to do another one, and I'm also assuming that it's going to be more difficult because you're going to have to explore territory with which you're not familiar.
Yeah, they want another book, and I'm changed my name, and I'm joining a witness protection program. So I don't want to write another book. But yeah, the next book has to not be set in Glasgow, and it has to have different characters, and it can't just be my old familiar stamping ground, and that's going to be difficult for me. Yep. So I'm hoping I die before that happens.
But at least you know somebody in publishing.
Yeah, that's true. Hodders and Stoughton, well done them. They just said to me, write what you want, see you later, bye. And I'm like, okay, that was a very productive meeting. So I did, I wrote what I wanted.
So you are going to, have you started another one?
No, not yet. I'm kind of waiting. I took this year off to try and get better, and they've been great. I must admit the publishers have been great. And I've just taken this year off to try and get healthy and strong again so that next year I can go back on tour and write, yeah.
What does Ashley think about you going back on tour? Because, she went through every second of all of this with you.
She's on tour with me.
All right.
She's coming with me. She's going to support me on every gig, and she's going to be there so she can keep an eye on me. And she's dead funny, so she's going to support the tour, and it'll be nice for us to be on the road together. She's not quite survived the cancer diagnosis. It absolutely broke her in two, and the hardest thing I've ever had today was tell her, sorry, the hardest thing I've ever had today was tell her that I had cancer. It was really difficult, and I knew that it was going to rip her in two, and it did, and it's never really been right since, so I'm sorry, but that's a hard one for me because she just was like anybody out there's mammy, and she's no different from any other daughter or son that's mammy or parent had cancer. It absolutely broke her, and it was the hardest conversation I ever had. And before I even got it out, she went, it's cancer, and I was like, yeah. She went, what is it? I went, stage 3, and she just dropped to her knees, and I was like, oh God, this is awful. So it really does rip the heart out of family. And then a couple of weeks later, she went, only you could get stage 3 and survive. Must have been a good puddle you drank out of.
I'm just thinking you've got Ashley with you on tour, so that's one bit of your family sorted. How are you going to break it to Honey?
She might come with us. We might have her on stage in a pram, who knows? She loves the attention. She doesn't like people. She's happy, Myra Hindley. You've got to keep an eye on her. And she's all right 1 minute and orang the next. I wonder where she gets that from. But we were at the beach a couple of days ago because we go tours on all the wee locks, and a man, one of the, can I have a wee look at your dog? I was like, no, please don't. She doesn't like, I'm good with dogs. I was like, please don't. And he was a big skinny bloke with tattoos, and he was half naked with a pair of shorts on. It was hot, and I was like, Gunny, no, and she's that size, the size of an angry croissant. I was like, Gunny, no, come near her. And he's like, hello, and she just flew at him and tried to bite his ankle, and I had to pull her off, and he's like, oh, you need to keep an eye on her. I went, no, maybe you need to keep back. Don't come near her, she doesn't like being touched. And people see her in the pram, and they immediately put their horn in, and she's like, she turns into a werewolf. And I did keep saying to people, don't touch her, she doesn't like strangers.
I'm thinking some of this runs in the family.
Aye, she's me or the back. But I don't understand why people don't say to me, can I touch your dog? And I'm like, no. And then they get offended, like, why no? I went, because I said no. I went, I'm good with dogs, have a go. And they're like, fucking hell. I'm like, yep, I did tell you, snapdragons in the pram, so.
Now, the one thing we haven't explored are your own reading habits, because we were talking earlier on about the fact that you had used a Twitter space for to talk about books, about what people read, about the books that changed them, etc., etc., etc. So let me turn that back on you. I mean, what do you read, and what made a huge impression on you?
I like really dark crime novels. Mo Hader, her, God love her, she passed away. Mo Hader's books, the Jack Caffrey series, is the most dark, sinister, horrific, horrible, terrifying books ever. Loved them, read every one of them. I love Val McDermott's book. I also like chick lit, that they call it, like Jane Fallon's book. And I do love a Jenny Colgan book about a wee woman who's went down to the ocean, and she's got a bike with a wee basket on it, and she lives in a nice wee house, and she meets a man called Derwent. I love them as well. I love a whole range of books. It just suits your mood. If I'm really tense and stressed, I'll listen to a wee uplifting Jenny Colgan, or something nice about a man that never really turned up and married the right woman, or I'll read about Mo Hader, about Jack Caffrey trying to kill somebody in a caravan. It just depends how I'm feeling.
Caravans are a bit of a theme with Janey, by the way.
I love a caravan. Love it. I've not got one. I've always wanted a caravan. When I was a kid, we used to go to the caravan. A 4-berth sleeps 9. So...
What kind of reaction did you get from the First Minister when you started doing these voiceovers?
She liked them because I was actually sticking to the absolute truth. I was sticking to the facts because the daily briefings were so long and the journalists were so shit. They were just, can you catch the COVID if you fly a kite? I'm like, what? So I just condensed it all down into whatever I took notes of what it is. Today, 2 Alsatians apart. You can't have more than 5 people in your house. And I took all and then I just did the voiceover like that.
You're missing out the bit about what you did if they didn't follow that.
Aye, they get a boot up the crack of their ass. But and then of course I had all the wee bits about a clicky pen and Frank get the door. She was always getting, but Frank actually started off with Theresa May when she resigned. That was the first time Frank appeared, and she was like, I hate you all. You've right upset me. I'm going to go to my wee house in Italy and get my sling back. So Frank, get the door. And then she goes out. So then Frank became a character that kind of, and we sold all the merch and all the very first wave of merch. It was like thousands of pounds went to the STV Children's Appeal. So we did all that for charity as well. And it was great. Folk love Frank, get the door, and they love the clicky pens and things.
Now, I'm acutely aware that apart from the fact that you've got a big audience here, we've also got an online audience, and I think, so we're going to put the lights up and get some more questions. So I have to say that Janey did say in advance, I said, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And she said, no.
No.
So she's all yours, and what I'd like you to do is put your hands up, and somebody with a mic will come to you if I know there's somebody in the room that's going to start off our questions. The first one's always the most difficult, but somebody has to have a question. Otherwise, you're going to have to listen to me again, and that's
just make it up. Make stuff up.
Come on, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
right.
Somebody will come to you with a mic.
Yeah, hang on then, and you'll get a mic. We'll come to you.
I've got one. Hang on.
Hiya. Can
Hiya,
you see me?
there.
I'm up the top.
Hiya.
Ruth, a wee bit higher. Up.
Sorry?
Up.
Up high, Ruth.
Up
Ruth.
high.
Ruth, look at me.
Balcony.
Look at me. Up there.
High. Here. Hiya. Right, Janey, where's the Janey Godley Memorial Caravan going to be parked? What's your location of choice? Is it doing an air for the fair fortnight, or?
I think if I did have a caravan, I'd want to own a beach, so it'd probably be Saltcoats, proper old school Saltcoats.
Saltcoats at the fair?
Aye. Is that it? God, I wanted more. Anybody else got a question? There must be some people.
Well, we've got a question here, an online question from Heather.
Online.
And yes, this is a bit delicate to her. She says, any chance of an audio book? And she said, sorry, I know this is a book festival, but would if there was one, would you narrate it?
I have narrated. You can get both my books on audio. I recorded them while I was going through chemo.
Including the new one?
Including the new one. You can get it on my website, janeygodley.com.
Here endeth the commercial section. Is there anybody else in the audience here? Because I've got another...
You've got lots of time. You better start thinking up questions.
Otherwise, I'll set Janey on you, and you don't want that. There's a hand up in the middle there. If you could just be kind enough to pass it along.
Over there.
Yeah, she's...
Hang on, you're going to get a microphone.
Wait for the microphone.
A toilet roll tube like that.
Microphone's coming along the row, I hope.
Pass it along.
Oh, hi. I have quite a loud voice anyway. What was school life like for you? And were you the same sort of character, always with sort of, I can imagine people in my class sort of made your day in class really fun because you had comments and wisecracks, about teachers and things.
Yeah, I was kind of shy. I was quite quiet. I think because of the poverty and, I was always really badly dressed. So kids who go through poverty and go through, you know, especially food poverty as well, we tend to hide ourselves. We tend to not make ourselves loud. But I was funny at school as well. There was a teacher, a sports teacher, who used to talk with her eyes shut. She used to go, Janey Curry. And every time she shut her eyes, I'd go. And then, okay, like this. And I mean, I've spoke to a lot of my school friends, and I was always a wee, you know, I was quite even though there was an awful lot of abuse and poverty, I was quite a happy child. But we tend not to be the class clown because I don't want to draw attention to myself because I'm wearing my mammy's shoes and I've got on a skirt that's too big for me, so you tend to kind of hide. But I was quite funny as a child. We were a funny family. My mammy was funny. Annie was a barrel of laughs, you know, and we all laughed and spoke, and we were quite a loud family. But when I was at school, I loved school. I was quite good at school, but I left at 16 because I had no shoes, and I couldn't go to school because literally had no shoes, and I had to leave school that day. And but I was online to take 6 O-levels, and I really liked school, but I needed a job, and I needed money, and I needed to eat, so I gave up on school very quickly.
Have you? I'm wondering about when you talk about Annie, who features, you know, obviously featured large in your life, but also still in your memories, and Senga in the book. I mean, how much is Senga like Annie?
There's a lot of Annie in Senga. Annie was the woman that would sit round the back in her bra in the sunshine and sing along to the music. She had such a hard life, Mama. I think she had a lot of difficulty, and she had a lot of psychological problems, and that's why I brought up in the book about a lot of women being gave Valium and stuff like that. You know, they were all just put on tablets. The minute you were sad in the 70s, you're just like, are you wearing an underskirt? Because we don't want men seeing through your skirt. I am wearing an underskirt. Right, there's tablets away home and numb yourself to death. So it was a really different time. So my mammy had, but there is bits of Senga. There is bits of Annie in Senga, for sure, for sure.
And there's some bits of you and Sharon.
There definitely is bits of me and Sharon. I would be nosy enough to read the whole book and try and figure out all what had happened. Don't want to ruin the story for you. Any other questions?
Yes, there's a hand up at the back there.
Hiya.
I'm sorry, if there's a hand up upstairs, I hope somebody's looking, because I can hardly see for the lights.
A microphone will come to you.
And there's a hand. I know I can see the hand, but I can't see the microphone's coming now.
Microphone's coming.
There's a masked stranger with a microphone coming to you.
A green top on.
Was there a turning point in your career when you actually got into comedy, and what was that?
I had a pub for 15 years in the east end of Glasgow, and I got really bored in the pub. It just was the same all the time. And then my husband's father died, and a lot changed, and my husband and I decided to walk away from his family. He hasn't spoken to his 6 brothers in 27 years. In fact, one of them died recently, and I told him, your brother's died, and to this day he hasn't asked which one. So, I know. So we left, and then I thought, what will I do? I know, I'll become a stand-up comedian. And that's what I did. There's no great plan. I just turned up at open spots. I came to the Gilded Balloon, me and Johnny Vegas in a van in 1996. So I just decided to do it. And I thought, how hard can it be? It's just talking, isn't it? Turns out it was easy.
I'm not disputing the fact that it was easy for you, but it's. I mean, you can't just talk. You've got to be funny.
Yeah, but that can't be hard. I think hard jobs are like people that they open surgery on babies' brains. That's really hard. Talking a lot of baloney to an audience isn't that hard.
I want it clearly understood that none of this was baloney, by the way. This was.
You know what I mean? It's not that. I don't find comedy that difficult. I find other things difficult. Comedy just felt kind of natural to me. So yeah, I just decided to do it. There isn't any great big plan. I just thought I'll turn up and do it and see what happens. And the thing is I remember thinking I was really rubbish, and this was in the early 90s, and I went to London to do open spots, and I was terrified, Ruth, because this is London. This has got all the comics in it. And I went to an open mic night, and I stood at the back terrified. My mouth was dry. I was like, oh my God, what if they can't understand me? What if they hate me? And then I watched these open mic spots and I went, nah, I've got this nailed. I'm good. I'm all right. And I did the exact same with Ashley. I took her to London to the exact same club and she was trembling. And I never said anything to her. She was literally shaking. And I said, just wait till you see the acts. Just wait. And then the first act went on and Ashley went, what was that? I was like, second act on, she's like, what? Third act on, Ashley went, I've got this nailed. So, and it's weird, I think that the Scottish comics, because we're in such a smaller circuit, we worked harder at our craft than in London, where there was so many open spot nights, there was so many open mic nights, there was so many clubs. And all the Scottish comics talk about this, that when they started out, they thought they were absolutely crap. But then when they went to, like London or Manchester, they're like, not even Manchester was really good. When they went to London, they're like, Jesus, we are really good at this. And it's not that London people were bad, it's just that there were so many nights and nobody was self-criticising, whereas in Scotland, when we did open mic nights, we were all like, mate, never do that, but again, that was crap. So we kind of nurtured each other in a sense.
How difficult is it dealing with, because I've watched this sometimes at fringe events, how difficult is it dealing with persistent hecklers who may be no strangers to alcohol?
That's a good one. When people heckle, I used to be really brutal at them, and really cut them at the knees. Now I'm like, because I've got older, I'm like, are you all right, Tam? Is everything all right in the house? Is she turned away against you? What's going on? Usually, if it's a good heckle, I'll celebrate it. But if it's just a man shouting, you're fat and ugly, I'm like, I'm getting banged harder than a faulty washing machine door.
Right. Well, we've got another. We've got another online question here, and this takes you back to medical matters, but in a good way, I think. It's from Wishart, I think is the name, and they say, do you crack jokes with your oncologist? Because mine like it. Mine likes it.
Do I crack
jokes with your oncologist? Because she said...
yeah, every single member of the NHS staff have had it, my oncologist has said, her and I have a good laugh about things. Every now and then I'll say, do you want to have a wee look at the area? And she's like, not today, but if you force me, it's creepy. So she's good. No, I made a lot of laughs through the cancer. It was funny, we did have some good laughs about it. And then, and the great thing about the Scottish NHS is they're very forward. And I'm like, am I going to die? They're like, no, right now. Okay.
Charming. Have we got any more from here? Yes, there's another hand up at the back there.
Hand up there.
There we go.
Oh, there's some people up there as well. We'll come back. The problem is the lights are shining right on our eyes, so we can't see you.
Hi, I'm just interested to know, I'm over here, Janey. Over here.
I can see you. You stood up.
No, you can't see me. I'm sitting down.
There's somebody up there. All right, there. Sorry.
I'll stand up.
Please forgive me. There was a person up there also talking at the same time, and it was like the really weirdest ventriloquist act you'd ever seen. I'm like, sorry.
No, I'm just interested to know what you think about Jerry Sadowitz's show getting cancelled.
I don't really comment on other men's jobs because I don't want men to comment on me.
Okay, I was going to say, and in the cancel culture in general, what's your thoughts about that?
Just people have got every right to be offended at what you say, and you've got every right to apologise if you think you're wrong, and I was wrong and I apologised. And I think if you apologise, people have got either the right to accept it or they've got the right not to accept it. People want to tell me they want to kill me, they've got every right to say it, and I've got every right to react to it. So it is what it is, but I said things that were wrong, and I immediately apologised. I didn't need a PR to tell me to apologise. I did it myself on camera, and I will be apologetic forever because I said things that were really out of context and really hurtful, and it hurt other people, and that is wrong. Comedy isn't about hurting people, and for other people, what they do, that's their business. What I do is my business. I was wrong, I apologise, and I'll stand by that apology till I die. Good question, though.
For what it's worth, Janey, I think you should file that episode under yesterday's news, you know.
No, I think I do get that a lot of people want to not talk about it. I'm happy to talk about it. And when people bring it up, I'm happy to say, no, I thought I was being funny, I was being stupid. And then the things for the podcast, you know, they were cut down. I was paraphrasing somebody else. I wasn't actually saying that, but that was cut. There's a lot there that's contextually needs to be looked at. But the bottom line is, if people are hurt, and you've hurt people with your mouth, I was taught to apologise. And if you apologise with sincerity, it should be what it is. And if people still want to go on about it, I'm quite happy to talk about it. You know me, I'd show people with a scar in my fanny, so...
This is so... We're going to take a couple from the online audience. Yes, I'll come back to it, but I've got a couple here from the online that I think you might enjoy. From Susan, who says, which aspects of life do you think were better in the 70s and which do you think were worse?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think we all romanticise and go, wasn't it great? We used to leave our doors open. No, we didn't. I had a creepy uncle in the 70s, so no. There was a lot that I think, and it's a really stupid thing to say, but I love the freedom that I had that Ashley never got. Ashley never got to put 10 pence and watch a train run right over it, and because I wouldn't let her. Ashley never got to swim in a burn with rats. Ashley never got to go on a 5-mile hike with a bike with one wheel bigger than the other in the blistering sunshine until she actually had to chap a woman's door and ask a stranger's door and ask for a drink of water. So I had this freedom that it was probably not freedom, probably lack of parental guidance, and where we would go out. And, you know, you wouldn't come back to 8 o'clock at night starving and sunburnt, and you're either out or you're in, remember that? You're either out or you're in. Mama had been in charge of Brexit, that had been sorted in a week. But I love the freedom we had as children, that it wasn't so health and safety. You came off a swing in a swing park in the 70s, you broke your bones. There wasn't that spongy stuff that they have now. And then if you did get hurt, you went to, remember the wee parkies hut, and there was always a creepy old man in it. Why was it always a man? Why was it like, do you want to come in and have a bit? No, I'm fine. I'll rub my sore knee with paper and a paper towel and water. It was always a creepy man. I don't know why they never just hired a lot of women to do that job.
Was there somebody with a hand up in the audience here before I go back to the
There's
online?
There's people up there, Ruth, as well.
Oh, sorry.
Look, over that side.
Okay, in the back row there, if somebody can...
Over here.
There's a hand up there, but there's also a hand up there.
Right, but she's got the mic.
Hi,
Right.
sorry. When you first started writing Nothing Left Unsaid, did you want it to be a crime novel? Because it's obviously been promoted as a crime novel, but did you plan it as a crime novel, or did it just come to you?
Yeah, I wanted there to be a crime in it. I'm not happy unless there's a wee crime somewhere. I wanted to write a crime novel. I've always loved crime novels, so I thought I'll put a crime in it. And I think it's such an unusual crime. It's not a celebrated crime. Excuse me. So yeah, I did want to write a crime novel. Yeah.
And you'll need to read the whole book to find out exactly what the crime was. So there you go. You can't. And no cheating, no going to the back at the. There's a yes, I know, but I've got another one here that I'm keen to take, if you don't mind, Janey. It says, Angela says you and Ashley are obviously very close, and she said her daughter and she are very close as well, but they disagree on various things. And what do you and Ashley disagree about? Lots.
She disagrees on the way I behave online. She's been telling me for years to stop arguing with people and stop retweeting BAMs, as she calls it. She disagrees with some of my politics. We disagree on food. We disagree on there's lots that we disagree on. She is like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, well, I'm right. So there is quite a lot of things that we disagree, but we're not in harmony that way. She will come in and say, you know, she went, some of your hot takes need sorted, you know. And I'll come out and I'll read something in the news and I'll go, well, I think that. And she's like, I'll give you an example. Husband and I were out. I never ever say his name. He likes his anonymity. And there is overgrown trees. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but all the foliage is all overgrown. There's hundreds and hundreds of overgrown foliage. And the trees are overgrown, and you can't see road signs, and the trees are huge. And Ashley went, shut up, you annoying old woman. Are you that woman like, I remember when this was all concrete? Leave the trees alone. I went, but they're overgrown. Who were you measuring them? So we do have quite a lot of debates like that. Apparently I want all the trees cut down. I didn't. Has anybody else noticed this, or is it just me? Yeah, there's just so much nationalists like, the trees are good for us. And I'm like, no, they're hiding the road signs.
Okay. Have we got anybody else here before we go back to the
There's
online?
somebody right up
no, there's
the back.
there's somebody in the back row there that's
Right
had their
up
hand
the
up for a long
back.
while. She's
The
got a mask
microphone
on.
It's coming to you. Right up
Keep
the
your
back.
hand up. She's got
Keep
a
your
mask
hand
on.
up so
Back row.
Pass it along, like COVID, pass it along.
There we go. Right, yep.
Hi, is it on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Janey, I was brought up with a single parent in the 40s, which was tough because of the abuse that I experienced. Having worked in Glasgow and some of the other disadvantaged areas in Edinburgh, and what you're saying about your book, brings a lump to my throat.
Oh, bless.
But a political question is, what do you think now that some of our families are relying on food banks? And I was in Morrison's yesterday, and there was a notice up advertising banks for school uniforms. Are all our children not entitled to the best possible start in life?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Give that woman a cheer. Absolutely. It doesn't matter what government is in. The poverty I suffered in the 70s is still being suffered today, and there's always an excuse. I don't care if it's the Scottish government, I don't care if it's Westminster, I don't care who it is. Stop Wayne's having shame, gone to school with dirty shoes and dirty socks and dirty pants and starving. It shouldn't be happening today. We are one of the richest countries in the Western world, and there's no reason why children are still eating out of food banks, but they will, because that is the way the economy is, and it's going to get worse. We are going to face it worse.
I'm just going to quickly ask you one more question because we're almost out of time here. But Kenneth says that, he comes from Shettleston, and he said he could totally relate to the book, and it reminded him of his own mother and her sisters when he was growing up, and it made him laugh a lot. And there are a lot of really funny bits in the book. He says, Kenneth B says, what do you think it is that gives Glasgow people their sense of humour?
I think what gives Glasgow people a sense of humour is that darkness that they laugh at the weirdest things. I'll give you an example. Standing at a bus stop, and the wee woman went, how you doing? I went, fine. She went, my one kidney failed, that's my other kidney failing. And then laughed. And I'm like, Glasgow people do that. That's it, the house is flooded, the couch is ruined.
Now listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost out of time to say, but the thing is that Janey will be around to talk to you because there's a signing place just outside there which will be directed to you. But in order to let Janey get there, if you would be just kind enough to stay put for, literally just a couple of minutes, let us stagger down the stairs and let Janey leg it to the signing room.
And if I'm going to be signing your name, if it's a difficult name to pronounce, please don't get upset. Spell it to me. I'll see you out there. Thank you.